This video will go over the policy debate or CX debate speech times and the procedures that follow in a round. As a lesson preview, this video will only cover the policy speech times so you can be more comfortable on how this event operates. A policy debate round is a little bit longer than an LD round in that there are two main sections. The first is for the constructive or the C speeches, and the rest are for the rebuttal speeches or the R speeches. So you can think of policy debate as two separate debates that are happening within one round. So the first speech that occurs in a policy round is the 8-minute 1AC. In this speech, the first affirmative speaker introduces the affirmative arguments. After the 1AC, a 3-minute cross-ex occurs, in which the second negative speaker, also refers to as the person doing the 2NC, will ask the first affirmative speaker 3 minutes worth of questions about the affirmative arguments, as well as any possible concessions that the affirmative could be forced to make. After cross-ex, the first negative speaker gives the 8-minute 1NC, in which the first negative speaker introduces any new negative arguments, as well as answering the affirmative's case very briefly. After the 1NC, the first affirmative speaker that has just spoke before the 1NC will take 3 minutes of cross-examination to ask the negative speaker any questions. After the 1NC, the second affirmative speaker will give the 8-minute 2AC, in which they will answer any negative arguments on the negative case, as well as defend their affirmative case, to defeat any negative rebuttals that were made on the affirmative side. After the 2AC, the 1NC that has just spoke before the 2AC will take 3 minutes of cross-examination to ask the 2AC questions. After the conclusion of the cross-ex period, the second negative speaker will stand up and give their 8-minute 2NC. They will answer any AF arguments on the AF case, and they will defend the negative case. After the 2NC, the second affirmative speaker that has also just spoke before the 2NC will stand up and ask the 2NC questions. Although the cross-examination periods might be a little bit arbitrary at first, it's very simple when you think about in terms of time. If your speech is not the next one that is going to occur, you're going to ask your opponent the question. However, if your speech is next, that means that you need to take time in order to prep for your next speech, and so you shouldn't be asking the other side questions when you should be prepping. Right after the 2NC occurs, the first negative speaker will stand up and give the 5-minute 1NR. In this speech, the negative's objective is to strengthen the negative's arguments and respond to the affirmative arguments. However, because the time is substantially less, the negative speaker must strategically allocate time on the most important arguments in the round and start to collapse on the most important arguments. After the 1NR, the first affirmative speaker will stand up and give their 5-minute 1AR, in which they will strengthen the AF's arguments and respond to the negative's arguments. After this, the second negative speaker will give their 5-minute 2NR. And because this is the last speech for the negative side, the goal of the negative speaker is to summarize the negative arguments and answer final AF arguments. The reason why the negative has to summarize their arguments is that this is the last speech or last impression that the negative will make on the judge. So it is important for the negative to leave a very memorable last impression to the judge so the judge can vote for the negative. Then after the 2NR, the second affirmative speaker will give their 5-minute 2AR, in which they will summarize the AF arguments and answer any final negative arguments. Again, this is the last speech in the entire debate and also the last thing that the judge will ever hear. So the goal of the affirmative speaker is to summarize the AF arguments and make it really easy for the judge to decide which side should be voted for. And so this is the overall structure of a policy debate round, and I hope this video helped you on learning the general procedures of this debate event.